I've got 13 FPS on this bit. Let's go! POV, there's more enemies on screen than you have POV, than you have FPS. Oh, wait, never mind. I'm just staying in this corner. Oh, 70 FPS. I'm just staying here. Right, you guys have fun.
This is gaming.
Fuck off, I'm trying to get FPS over here.
What if I move into your view and move around?
Ooh.
Oh, flamer!
Oh, there goes 10. There goes 10.
Yeah, the real threat of flamers isn't the amount of damage that they can do, which is obscene. That damage of theirs. It's the frames that they cause you to lose.
Yeah, that FPS of mine.
FPS of yours absurd. God damn, look at him. 28 frames over here. Warhammer 40k Darktide, a game so chaotic you're lucky you don't start growing horns and claws just playing it. If you've ever played Vermintide with some friends, you know just how chaotic life can get when your job is to rid the world of corruption. And 40,000 years into the future, not much has changed. We still have chaos in all shapes and sizes, and it's still your job to fight it back with just about any weapon you can get your hands on. This is of course too much for any one person to take on alone, so to even the odds a little bit, you're dropped in squads of 4, though half the time this doesn't really help, either because chaos still outnumbers you about 6,000 to 1, or because your teammates accidentally blow up that barrel you're stood right next to. Careful, get the bomb! Okay. Hey, I never said I wasn't that teammate. Now I know what you're thinking. I don't have 3 friends. And let me just tell you something, brother. Same, to be honest. But worry not. You can technically play alone, but the bots aren't exactly what you'd call even remotely smart. Yeah, I think there was a miscommunication when they made the bots in this game because they may be artificial, but they are certainly not intelligent. Jesus Christ, these bots are so stupid. Your best bet is finding 3 other people who want to play, either through friends, Discord servers, or just random matchmaking. I personally teamed up with a bunch of people from other creators to friends from the Discord, and adding literally anyone else to the party instantly took the game from a frustrating grind to pure chaotic hilarity. There's a heal all the way back there, by the way, if you want one.
See if you can mark it.
No, it's the same one that was down there.
Anybody leave it?
For God's sake.
It broke my legs.
For the love of God. Jesus Christ. So call me Miss Frizzle and hop aboard this magic school bus as we dive into 40k Darktide. Like I said at the start, if you've played Vermintide before, you'll know exactly how all this works. But just in case there are any heretics in the audience, let me break down the basics for you. You and 3 other teammates, or rejects as they're called here, are dropped into a chaos corrupted area and are given an objective. In the case of this closed beta, there were 4 missions available, and let me just tell you something, the main mission doesn't really change a lot of the basic gameplay. Sure, there are different maps and buttons to push and sometimes a boss, but most of the time, no matter which mission you choose, you'll be fighting your way through a sea of stinky heretics of all shapes and sizes. You have your basic forms like the swarmers and shooters that don't pose much threat alone, but in large enough quantities can be a lot to deal with. The real ones you need to worry about are the elites. These come in a bunch of forms, and just about all of them are a massive pain in the ass. You have these super tough melee dudes with huge axes, guys with rapid fire rifles, flamers, snipers, bombers, futuristic bloated corpses, mutants, and even a guy with a net gun, and yeah, that's just as annoying as it sounds.
Get this shit off me!
Once these appear, you want to take them out as soon as possible, since just one of them can cause you trouble, so if a bunch turn up at once, shit can quickly go sideways. There are also bosses which normally turn up at the end of missions, but can sometimes just spawn in randomly, which adds a small amount of stress and difficulty, especially if you're playing with bots. Oh, like, yeah, it was this guy! Well, right.
Well, you didn't A damage to him.
Oh, well, time for all my bots to die. I don't know, bot player 3, just gonna try and res him. And kill him, no. Yeah, it's just me.
Oh, there goes all the bots.
Oh my god.
Oh, fucking hell. Oh, fuck me. Game strips sucks.
Occasionally during missions, a swarm will occur, which will bring a massive number of enemies flooding your way, like a tide of darkness, if you will. These floods will also have a few elites tossed in there for good measure, and this is when the game is truly at its best, because all you can do is mash left click and pray they stop coming before you run out of ammo, HP, or both. I'm going for it. Fuck you, Chibs. I can't wait to screw myself out of getting any completion bonus. Oh my god, how does Chibs get there before me? Right, get ready to fucking run.
I can run like this.
Please don't fall off again. Wow, I went the long way around. Holy shit. Right, just get to the whatever it's called.
Get to the elevator? It doesn't really have the same ring to it, I'm not gonna lie to you.
Honestly, there isn't really much to explain about the basic gameplay. You move through the levels, completing objectives, and taking out entire nations worth of heretics, but what is it all for? There are chunks of story here and there, and I'm sure in the full game there'll be a lot more story, but the main reason to play is to grind for loot and levels. There are 5 difficulty levels, and to beat the higher levels, you'll need better gear and skills to survive the unholy levels of heresy being tossed your way. The higher the difficulty, the higher the reward. So you are pretty much just grinding loot to make the game harder so you can grind more loot, then rinse and repeat until you are totally dripped out. But what loot and skills do you unlock? Well, that all depends on your class. Before you can get into gameplay, you first have to create your very own reject and choose their class. Don't worry, in the beta you can have up to 5 of these, so you're not locked into any one class and you can feel free to choose them all. You can make them look however you want and choose some backstory for them. I just went ahead and recreated my favourite witch characters, which I absolutely love for the giant plot that they provide, the huge plot and nothing else. Also, hashtag Team Yen, she's mommy. Anywho, you have the choice of 4 classes in game, and each of them is best used for a specific role. They each have active and passive abilities, grenades, auras, and unique weapons that allow them to better perform their role, giving each of them a unique playstyle from the others. The veteran Sharpshooter is the ranged specialist of the 4 with abilities and weapons that allow them to pick off key targets from afar, or spray and pray to clear the immediate area around them. Right out the gate, they get access to a laser rifle with a ton of ammo and a quick but relatively low damage melee shovel. Of course, their main gimmick is ranged combat, so most of the time you'll be using the rifle, and it's a bit of a weird feeling using ranged weapons so much in a game like this, but you quickly get used to it, and it's pretty fun, especially if you have teammates on the front lines keeping enemies off you. Just try not to shoot them in the back too much, otherwise they might get a little bit upset at you. Later on, they can get a hold of a ton of other weapons, including shotguns, fully automatic rifles, and their unique weapon type, which is plasma weaponry. So whether you like picking off targets from afar or blowing them apart up close, they have choices for it all. Their active ability allows them to enter a ranged stance, also known as the gamer stance. For 4 seconds, this shows nearby elite and specialist enemies as priority targets and increases your range damage for the duration. So use this to take down key targets or thin the herd whenever you're getting picked apart. Honestly, I pretty much exclusively use this for the elites, since it can get a little bit crowded on screen once things get going. Picking them out from a crowd and picking them off with the damage increase is great and can really help your team out and let them focus on the main swarm.
Sever the head, the body dies.
Their passives give them increased damage to weak spots and a massive ammo capacity compared to the other classes. So shoot for the face and be liberal with that ammo. Their grenade is an all-reliable frag, so does a ton of area damage and is great for clearing an area and taking out a bunch of targets at once. Every class also has an aura that benefits themselves and nearby allies, and for the Sharpshooter, whenever an elite is killed, you gain a small amount of ammo. Honestly, the Sharpshooter might be the most basic option since they're pretty much just good at everything. They can do loads of damage from range and in melee since they can still get some pretty strong weapons. They're a good pick to learn the game, but as far as unique gameplay and excitement goes, they're not too crazy. Zealots, on the other hand, are a step in the right direction if you're looking for pure chaotic fun. They swap the ranged focus for a total disregard for their own lives as long as they take down foes first. They're less about taking out key targets from a range and more about taking down literally everything they can as quickly and as violently as possible to appease the Emperor. To start off with, they get an axe and a full auto pistol, so are fully committed to the frontlines bit. Later on, they can unlock even more frontlines weapons like huge two-handed hammers. Wouldn't show him, holy shit. Flamers, which are in the beta, so you can quite literally purge the heretics in holy fire. This makes them a terror to face up close, but once enemies can shoot back at you, they tend to struggle unless they can close the gap. Fortunately, their ability gives them a huge dash that can push straight through most weaker enemies. On top of this, they gain back all their toughness and have a guaranteed crit on the next melee attack. Oh yeah, I probably should have mentioned earlier, but your health bar is made up of 2 parts, toughness and HP. Toughness can be replenished by standing near allies and getting melee kills, whereas HP can only come back from healing items, and purple HP can only be healed at Medicae stations. Anyway, this ability is great for closing the gap between you and ranged enemies, or if you just want to bury yourself in the sea of enemies, which is a pretty fair point for a zealot. Their passives also feed their playstyle, making them an absolute terror in close quarters. They gain more damage the lower their HP is, gain invulnerability to deadly damage every 90 seconds, and have a 10% buff to their melee attack speed. Thank God there isn't melee-friendly fire, because zealots would cut through the sea of enemies and the entire team if it was possible. Their grenade stuns all enemies caught in the blast radius, so it's great for stalling elites and allowing you to wail on them for massive damage, or get a cheeky res if your teammate is in the middle of a sea of enemies. Their aura improves the toughness of nearby allies, causing them to take less damage as long as they have some. Zealots are the most balls to the wall of the classes. All they want to do is dive into enemies and tear them limb from limb as violently as possible without much care for their own survival. It can be a lot of fun, you just have to be careful to not go too ham and end up diving so deep that you drown. around. The Psychers are probably the most interesting sounding of the class choices, and for good reason. They are mutant humans who can use literal magic to blow up enemies' heads and enhance their weapons. These are another single target killer that can do some massive damage if they can channel their focus, albeit at massive risk to them. They start off with possibly the worst loadout of the lot, with a regular sword and a revolver. The sword is fine for cleaving through hordes of enemies, and the Magnum deals great single target damage, but it has no ammo and no use outside of big boys. The real reason their starting loadout is so bad is because of what they can unlock, which are their 4 swords and staffs that let them make way more use of their magic to constantly empower themselves and deal way more damage. Once you get their full item set, they're one of the coolest things to see in game, but for some reason they start you off with super basic stuff, and it feels pretty bad, man. Now, before we talk about the main ability of the Psychers, we kinda need to talk about everything else first. Their grenade isn't a grenade. Instead, they can channel their power to deal massive damage to a single target, eventually blowing up its head if it's a killing blow. There's no ammo, so you can do this as much as you want, but every time you channel your powers, your peril goes up, which is basically how unstable your magic is getting. If it reaches 100%, you'll explode and deal massive damage around you, but instantly down yourself. You can reduce peril by holding R when you have your magic hands out, or by using active ability. This can reset peril to 0, and you basically do a force push to stagger and even knock down enemies in front of you. This is great for clearing some space, and of course, resetting peril to let you deal even more damage with that magic. For their passives, every time they get a kill with their brain burst, they gain a stack of warp charge up to 4 for a maximum of 20 seconds. Each stage increases damage by 3%, so building and keeping these stacks for as long as possible will really help you out even when you're not using magic. They also reduce peril generated by 10%, which is pretty basic and sounds like it should really just be built into the character anyway, but I digress. As for their aura, all nearby allies deal more damage to elite enemies, so pretty useful all around. The Psychers have one of the most powerful, but also the most challenging playstyles, with their magic being incredibly strong, but also incredibly risky, meaning you have to balance dealing damage and the rest periods to keep them alive. If you like magic and explosions, then you can't go wrong here, but just be prepared for a bit of a steep learning curve, and you'll probably blow yourself up once or twice. And finally, we have the Ogrin, which is basically an ogre, but a little bit more human. These are chunky boys and the tanks of the game, but just because they're the toughest doesn't mean they can't also deal a ton of damage. They can toss their weight around and get deep into swarms of enemies and batter them around to make it out alive. They start off with a huge single shell shotgun and a club, and these aren't too bad to start off with. The shotgun is great for clearing an area in front of you or dealing massive damage to a single target up close, and the club is just fine for swinging wildly into enemies and hitting anything you can get close to. Later on, they unlock auto shotguns and grenadier gauntlets, which we didn't get to see in the beta, but the auto shotgun is pretty brilliant, and it can clear a massive amount of space or just dump shells into a boss to do massive damage. Their key is all very in your face, and they want to get close to enemies and draw aggro for the squad, while also making sure they do great damage themselves. Just make sure you let your team know when you're going in, as the big hitbox tends to make you a bit of a magnet for friendly fire. Their ability is called Bull Rush, and honestly, it does what it says in the tin. They charge headfirst into enemies, knocking just about anything aside and dealing some tasty damage. It's great for clearing the path through a swarm and disrupting a ton of enemies at once to give you some space or just slow down the swarm. Just make sure you can fight your way out from where you land, as your chunky frame does mean everyone will be swinging for you. For their passives, their melee attacks stack more, they cannot be interrupted by damage when reviving, and they take less damage both to toughness and HP. All this boils down to them being hard to stop once they get going, so charge and smash like there's no tomorrow. Their grenade, hilariously, is an entire box of grenades that doesn't explode unless you get a skill, and it does great damage to a single target, but if you're looking to make space, then they aren't the best. And finally, their aura increases heavy melee damage for all nearby allies. The playstyle of Ogrins is exactly what you'd expect. They're chunky lads that can barge through enemies in moments and act as the de facto tank for your team, pretty much because you're the biggest and the toughest. If you want to get in the front lines and stay there for a long time, these are the lads for you. And that's pretty much everything. There is a ton more content coming in the full game at the end of November, like a bunch more levels to play, class skills, and more, so if you want more Darktide content, let me know by liking and commenting, all that fun stuff. If you don't want to miss future content, then subscribe to the channel. We're hoping to hit 50k by the end of the year, so I would appreciate it. And if you're feeling especially big penis and want to support the channel directly, then consider becoming a member on YouTube or a patron on the Patreon. Doing so gets you early insights into future content, increased voting power, discounts on merch, as well as shoutouts at the end of videos like Henry Tucker for his support at the officers tier. Thank you to all supporters. One last thank you for watching, and for now, I've been COLONELDAMNEDERS, and I will see you next turn.